Welcome to Chapter 1 of your NASM material, and my goal as we get through this chapter and the rest of your modules throughout the course is to really just break down the most important pieces of information, highlight not only the things that, hey, you really should be paying attention to this, you need to know it for your exam, but also the information that is going to set you up to succeed in the industry at large. Try to highlight the things that you might use a little bit more often when you're in the gym. And this first chapter is really important because this is setting the stage. Think of it as like your history lesson and a look into the future of where the industry is going. Because what you're focused on right now, personal training, one-on-one training, there's continual evolution. And I know that if you guys are in this course, you're aware of some of the health issues that our country and our world is facing. And the truth is, you really are the front lines of making a difference. So at the beginning of each of our chapters, we want to identify what are a couple of our main objectives. Call it our main takeaways from the information in the material. And one of the first ones that we're going to really talk about is understanding a fitness professional's role in this allied health continuum. Looking at chiropractors, doctors, physical therapists, all of the individuals and the practitioners that your clients might be working with. How do we work together? How do we understand where we fit into this puzzle of overall health and wellness for our clients? On top of that, we also want to make sure that we really understand what are some of the main issues, the main concerns, disease states, conditions that a lot of clients and their families may be dealing with. And then taking a look at when it comes to designing our programs, understanding training from the science side, differentiating between myths and fads and actual science-based information. Because in our world of information and social media, there's access to so much, but it becomes really challenging to know what's right, what's wrong, and what should I really be basing my assumptions and my training off of. And then the last piece of that is really understanding what does it mean to be a fitness professional and how can I make sure that I'm standing out amongst the crowd once I'm certified and I'm working with clients. Inside of our Axiom courses, I think one of the most important questions for you to be thinking about right now as you're starting this process is what does it really mean to be a great trainer? Right? Think about that. Maybe it's something that you should spend some time writing down. Because if we can work backwards from there, it's going to give us a great ending point. And I think it also helps us really start to dive into what is the role of a personal trainer? What service are we really providing for clients? And what areas of their life are we looking to make sure we make an impact in? Because there's a lot of ways that we can go about it. And the nice thing for you guys as coaches and trainers is there's definitely going to be some individualization. There are always going to be principles of training and physiology that we're basing our training around, but there's definitely personality style, approach, how I interact with people, the brand that I'm building, all these things that you get to start thinking about. And I say get to because I think it's an exciting time, but you should start thinking about now, what kind of trainer do I want to be? Because there's a lot more involved outside of just the gym. And I think a lot of people when they first get into personal training, we're very focused on, and I say we because I definitely was that way, very focused on the physiology, the reps, the sets. Hey, guess what? I understand muscle hypertrophy, so if you do what I say and we do the routine like this in the gym and you eat all the food and rest and do all the other things you need to do, we're going to see progress. And then you get into starting to work with people and you're like, why aren't they doing it? And I think one of the main pieces that we'll continue to come back to is there's human physiology. And inside of your NASM material and the foundation as a personal trainer, we are going to learn a lot of that. And it's really important because we want to make sure you do know how to appropriately create change and impact on the human body. But there's also psychology, right? Oftentimes in our lives, we know what to do, but we just don't do it. And a lot of clients are coming into you not just for your knowledge, for your information, your education, and your guidance, but they're coming to you for the coaching side of things, which really is getting to know them as an individual and helping to motivate them in the right ways. And that may end up being your biggest challenge beyond this course, but just keeping in mind as we continue to make our way through the material, I'll go back and I'll continue to refer back to the human psychology and the human physiology. And we got to find ways for those two to really work together. And another thing that's really interesting, I think, about our industry is the role of how you look and how that impacts your brand, right? Now, obviously, they found a photo of me right here. You guys can see shredded and all tanned up. But I think it brings up a good point is oftentimes students come into our courses, whether they're the in-person courses, we connect with people online, different areas around the world. And sometimes it's even of a concern. It's like, Joe, am I in good enough shape to be a personal trainer? And it's a really interesting question because without a doubt, Your personal brand is also reflected by how you look, how you carry yourself. It is in any industry, but especially in fitness. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to always be the absolute most in shape person in the gym, because think about it. The nice thing about there being lots of different types of people out there in the world who need help is that there's going to need to be lots of different types of personal trainers. Someone who's looking for elite levels of physique, maybe they're looking to get into bodybuilding shows, physique shows, that level of fitness, they're gonna look to someone who's been there and maybe aspires to be at that level, right? So they're looking for someone who is in that kind of shape, and that's great. But you may have someone else who they haven't worked out in 5 years, and they come into the gym, and working with someone at that level of fitness and that level of impressive strength, it could be intimidating, right? So I don't think there's a right and wrong. I definitely think for you guys, as you're going through this process, you kind of want to think about, myself, the people that are going to connect with me. Now, obviously, that's going to be a lot more than just your physical appearance, but those things do interact with one another. The way that I dress, all those things matter, and they're going to matter for the places that you live, right? The types of clients that you might want to train. And so I just think that that's something for you guys to be thinking about as we go through the process. Don't think about and don't get overwhelmed with the fact that you need to be 8% body fat year-round in order to do well, because I know lots of trainers who are nowhere near 8% body fat, and they're way busier than some of the most in-shape people in the gym. And the last thing I'll say about it is, funny enough, the busier you get with training, sometimes the less time you have to work out for yourself. So here's the balance that we start to strike as you guys enter into the industry. But without a doubt, as you're going about building your personal brand, all these things matter. And when it comes to being a great personal trainer, it is a lot more than just looking the part. It goes without saying that the impact that we're going to have on people's lives is so much more than just how they look in front of the mirror, on the beach. Those things are all going to be important, and people are motivated by physical changes, but we're talking about life-saving stuff and really serving, as we continue to talk about the health and wellness spectrum and working within the allied healthcare continuum, being really on the front end of trying to prevent these things for people, because without a doubt, not just in the United States, but around the world, obesity issues, epidemics of disease, and as we'll look even on the following slide, the ability to prevent a lot of these things with health and fitness as we continue to go throughout our lives. And looking at some of the leading causes of death in the world right now, looking at heart disease, stroke, and these issues, although there's always going to be genetic predisposition when it comes to having disease states. You may have a history of disease in the family. Genes can only respond to the signals that they receive. So for us, if we can help people make better decisions, lead healthier lives, then we're really having a massive impact on their lives beyond the gym. And as you can see on this slide here, second on our list of preventable diseases, meaning these are things us as coaches and trainers we can have an impact on. Not to say that we still might not have an impact on tobacco usage, because obviously we're going to have an impact on people's behaviors and lifestyles. So if we can get people off those things, that's amazing. But without a doubt, number two, obesity, that's where we fall. All right, this is where we can come in and shine in people's lives. Now, no doubt for a lot of individuals, we'll talk later on in the material a little bit about psychology and motivation and where people are in the process of change. But once we interact with, we get these people into our arms, we got to help them, because there's so much that people need out there, aside from just information, education, but the support and the coaching to make better decisions so that they can stay out of these disease states in the first place. And just to hit home on the same message here, really just understanding the impact that you get to have, or you're going to have on people, is we're not just talking about individuals, and that's obviously where each of us is going to create that impact as we work with clients, but just the global impact and effect of individuals like us trying to help people on a larger scale. It's crazy the economic impact that preventable disease and some of these issues have on our, not just country, if you guys are in the United States like we are right now, but the global economy. To me, some of the numbers that are on here are slightly astounding. By the year 2030, we're talking $47 trillion associated with chronic disease. To me, that's crazy. And no doubt, we're all going to play different roles in this allied healthcare continuum. But unfortunately, by the time people are reaching other health professionals, the issues are already there. So for us, it's really trying to be on the front end of these things and prevent them before they ever happen. So we won't spend too much time depressing you with some of these statistics, because I know, honestly, this is probably not new information to you. Whether or not the numbers are astounding or surprising or not, you know that the world is dealing with a healthcare crisis and an issue. And for you, without a doubt, you're going to have clients coming into the gym who are dealing with some of these chronic diseases, whether they've dealt with them within their family and they're trying to make sure they lead the right lifestyle to prevent those things happening to themselves, or they're dealing with it right now. And just so you kind of get an understanding, the scope of this course, the scope of your role as a personal trainer is not really to be an absolute expert, the go-to person on everything related to COPD, ischemic heart disease, but it's just to have some general working knowledge so that when individuals come in, you know where to go for the right information. You understand the types of things that you should and you shouldn't be doing in the gym to make sure that we're helping them along this process. So just pay attention. We're going to go through some of these as we get through the material to have a general understanding of those who are dealing with high blood pressure issues, those who are dealing with insulin issues, and just know that this is going to be an area where when you work with clients who have these types of conditions, the great thing is you have time to refer, not only to refer out to other healthcare professionals that hopefully you work with, but also to make sure you're finding the right information so that you're giving these people what they need in and outside of the gym. So being overweight, being obese, these are not new terms to you, but how do we actually go about identifying where that is, where someone exists in this process of being underweight, overweight, at a healthy weight, obese, morbidly obese? And so a general understanding of these categories is really important. And BMI, a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what BMI really is. BMI stands for body mass index. And a lot of people come through the gym. Even today, I'll have clients come in and talk about BMI and sometimes have the confusion of BMI and body composition. So BMI really is just based upon height and weight. Okay, now BMI is not the ultimate measure for every individual about their health. All right, because if you think about it, BMI, if there's only height and weight associated, it's going to be great at looking at population statistics, which is why it's so common, especially in the medical world. Individuals will go get their doctor's checkups and BMI ends up coming up in their numbers. But it only takes in height and weight. So for those of you guys who obviously have been working out for a significant period of time, understanding that, based upon your height, if you have a significant amount of muscle mass, it might not be the best indication of your health status. Just for you guys as an example, for me, I weigh about 165 pounds. I am 5'8", and so my BMI is slightly over 25. And as you guys can see here on the charts, being slightly over 25 means I'm at a slightly increased risk of disease state. Now, I think most would venture, and a lot of my other medical tests would confirm that I'm in a great health status. But from individual to individual, especially those with slightly more muscle mass, sometimes it can be, let's say, a misleading number as far as someone's health status. But don't discount it. When we are looking at the world at large, we're looking at the research that talks about obesity, overweight across the world in countries and large populations. It is a valuable number for us to understand and look at relative to someone's height, what is their weight, and can we correlate that to potential disease states and conditions down the road. And if you refer back to one of our previous slides that had some information on some of the leading causes of death, preventable death, and conditions throughout the world, heart disease is one of those. And I know that doesn't come as a surprise, but sometimes there's not always a great understanding of what is heart disease, how does cholesterol, how does plaque collecting in the arteries really relate to this? So what you guys can see here is an actual image of our arteries. And on the top, you guys can see an image of an artery that is clear of plaque. All right, and this plaque buildup happens, and we'll look at one of our later slides, HDL and LDL cholesterols, but a natural process as we age based upon lifestyle, food. Our body is always potentially building up and then hopefully removing and taking away this plaque in the arteries. All right, call it cholesterol. We'll talk about that, HDLs versus LDLs. But you see on the top a healthy artery, and on the bottom you can see this accumulation of plaque inside of the arteries. So as we, based on lifestyle, based on activity, based on nutrition, making the right or potentially the wrong choices, and for some of us there's obviously also a genetic predisposition, we may have accumulation of plaque inside of the arteries. And I think this visual is really nice because you can see it's pretty much you've got less flow through a pipe. If you were thinking about pipes in your house, you're going to get less water coming through that pipe without some sort of resistance. And this is the issue that ends up happening when it comes to cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, is the thickening of that plaque and not as much blood flow getting to the areas of the body that we need it. And one of the primary risk factors of heart disease or stroke is going to be hypertension, and that is high blood pressure. Really common and not uncommon for a lot of your clients, especially those over the age of 40, 50, to come in potentially on medications for hypertension, high blood pressure. So these are the kinds of questions that we're going to be asking. And just for you to have a general understanding and knowledge of this, if we look at, and you've probably had this done, you've gone to the doctor, between having the little clamp on your finger to get your heart rate, potentially having the cuff on your arm for blood pressure, those two numbers, if we look at a healthy blood pressure range, 120 over 80. What do those numbers really mean? Well, they're measures of pressure. All right, and the systolic versus diastolic. Systolic is systole. So systole is during contraction, when our heart is actually contracting. All right, so if you looked at the pressure inside of the arteries at that point in time, what does that look like? So that's going to be a higher number. It makes sense when the heart is contracting, we're pumping blood out into the body, so there's going to be an increase in pressure inside of those vessels. Now, during relaxation of the heart, that's where we get the second number. All right, what is the pressure inside of the arteries, inside of our system when the heart is relaxing? And this gives us some indication and correlation to these other disease states, because think about it. Obviously, if we go back to our analogy, thinking about the previous slide with the pipe and blood flow going through, well, if not only do we have decreased flow through the pipe, but all of a sudden we have increased pressure, think about a pipe bursting. And that might be an oversimplification of what happens inside of the body, but obviously over time, that additional stress on the heart and on the system can cause these issues and be a big indicator of someone's likelihood of having heart disease or stroke down the road. So when it comes to understanding atherosclerosis and heart disease and hypertension, oftentimes cholesterol in general kind of gets a bad rap. But one thing you have to keep in mind, the more that we learn about human physiology, is everything plays a role. But it's this beautiful, constant balance that our body needs to live a long, healthy life. So cholesterol does play some really important roles in the body. First off, it is important as far as building healthy cells, carrying products in the blood, and helping support the nervous system. So cholesterol in and of itself isn't bad, but a buildup of the wrong type of cholesterol in our diet and inside of our system can definitely contribute to the buildup of that plaque. And so without getting into the nutrition side of things yet, but taking a look at cholesterol, we have LDL, which we call low-density lipoproteins, and we have HDL cholesterol, high-density lipoproteins. And to simplify the process, LDLs, when they get into the system, they contribute to the buildup and the accumulation of plaque inside of our body, inside of our system, okay? So they contribute potentially more harmfully to that buildup of atherosclerosis inside the system. HDL cholesterols actually help to remove that. So when someone goes, and again, as you're understanding how much information should I know about this, Joe, first off, definitely just understanding what cholesterol is and what roles it play in the body, but also understanding when clients come in and they're giving you their cholesterol numbers, they're giving you their concerns from their doctors, hopefully they're having regular checkups, that you've got an understanding of what this information means. And without a doubt, we're going to want to moderately control and monitor those LDL levels. And the nice thing about HDL levels, especially as we look at overall cholesterol, is high HDLs, that's a good thing. That means we actually can start to take away some of the risk factors of other issues happening. And oftentimes we can improve those HDLs, not just with our diet, but actually with exercise. And so just having a general understanding of what cholesterol is, what role it serves inside of this whole heart disease process, and then also knowing how we can help people make the right decisions to increase those HDL levels and hopefully lower those LDL levels over time. And diabetes is another extremely common condition. Without a doubt, if you're training for long enough, you're going to have individuals who come in, whether they are type 1 or type 2 diabetic. So a good understanding of what role that plays in their ability to metabolize glucose and energy, it's going to be really important, especially when they're training in the gym. So just to understand and differentiate the two, type 1 is going to be what we call juvenile diabetes. This is more often than not something that you were born with. And the difference between the two is pretty important as well. In type 1 diabetics, they have the inability to create insulin. And as we continue to talk about nutrition and insulin and glucose, insulin plays a really important role. It's actually a really powerful hormone inside of the body. And insulin is important for us to actually, as we consume food and we break things down into glucose, which is going to be the simplest form of sugar, it allows us to bring that into the cell. All right, and if we're not producing insulin, then that glucose can never really make it into the cell and stays in our bloodstream. And that can be challenging for a number of reasons, regulating energy, definitely when we get into the gym and we're utilizing glucose for energy, having these spikes and dips in our energy state and glucose levels, not something we want. So those who are type 1 diabetics, of course, if they've been dealing with it throughout their life, hopefully it's in a controlled state. They're oftentimes going to be someone, maybe they have a pump where they're actually getting insulin put into the system. Now, oftentimes, if they're doing that, if they have not been exercising, okay, these are not only things that we're going to want to make sure that we're paying attention to on our intake when we're bringing new clients in, is understanding like how much they've been doing, but it's going to be even more reason to really ease into things, because not just the intensity of exercise, but even understanding how they need to eat before, maybe even during exercise, to really deal with the intensity that they're doing is going to be important. And don't be scared. Lots of people exercise with diabetes, and I know the first time I had clients come in with these concerns, like I was very nervous about the process. But thankfully, exercise is a really important part of dealing with it long term. A single bout of exercise is going to increase your insulin sensitivity and help with the process of bringing that glucose into the cell. And then looking at the difference between type 1 and type 2. Type 2 oftentimes is called adult onset. This may be associated with overweight or obese individuals, although that's not always the case. But think about it like this in the simplest terms. Sometimes the body will now become less responsive to insulin. If it is an issue of long-term diet inside of someone's life, overweight, obesity, it could be that they've been consuming these high levels of glucose and sugar for so long that their body has become somewhat desensitized to it. Now the challenge is that whenever we're not utilizing, we're not bringing glucose into the cells, our body's not responding to insulin, it's really hard to burn fat, right? Generally, we can't have insulin increased and fat burning at the same time, because they kind of compete against one another. Insulin is more about storing, it's a storage hormone, and obviously with fat loss we're going about breaking down. So we have someone who's overweight or obese, but they have issues with losing weight because of this process, okay? So without a doubt, as we start to look at nutrition stuff down the road, these will be the areas where we'll be working with a registered dietitian, referring someone out who may be in a disease state or a condition like diabetes. But oftentimes it's going to be moderating the insulin levels, moderating blood sugar levels throughout nutrition, and then again, making sure that exercise is an important part of the equation, because going back to our role in this allied healthcare continuum, oftentimes medications, other things to deal with hypertension, diabetes, they're going to help deal with the process, they're going to help deal with the symptoms, but they may not cure the underlying cause. For us as coaches and trainers, we're not going to necessarily be able to change anything about someone who's a type 1 diabetic. We're going to help them live a longer, healthier life and make sure that their body is in a great state, but we can make a huge impact on those who are type 2 diabetics, and some people may even see a reversal of that with the right lifestyle, the right nutrition, and that's where we really start to make an impact. All right, so now that we've laid out a lot of things, we've talked a little bit about some of the conditions, some of the issues, the disease states, the population statistics across the world. Really, we've just identified how important you are and why we need you. What do we do about it? All right, because if it was that simple, everyone would just get up, get off the couch, start running, and everybody would get in shape. Because that's what most people do when they want to get in shape, right? They think, all right, I got to get up and go run. And as we continue to go through the course, we'll find out that's actually probably not the best thing for a lot of people. No doubt, we need people to move more and eat less, and that's the simplest way we can look at it, but how they move may be very different for different people. And as it says here even on the slide too, this state of being deconditioned, it's not just being out of shape. It's not just needing to burn calories, because that would address, let's say, the metabolic side of things. And no doubt, as we look at weight loss, we look at body composition change, we need a difference between calories in, calories out. But for a lot of individuals, based on where they are in the state of life, especially those, many of your clients who are going to be in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s, they've lived a lot of life that's probably done some damage to their body. And maybe if they haven't been doing a lot of activity, they're not ready for the impact. And there's this whole other neurological side of the equation. And that's one of the things that I really love about the course material and the NASM approach, is just an understanding of these different systems of the body that are going to work together. It's not just your cardiovascular system. It's not just your muscular system. If it was, we could just run and lift. But we also have our skeletal system, we have our neuromuscular system, and a good understanding of how all these have to function and work together. Because just to give you an example, all right, we all grew up doing different things. I grew up in, playing sports, playing athletics, and how we would warm up. Okay, everyone, hey, start going right into jumping jacks. Now, for you and I, probably no problem, right? If you're active, you're healthy, you're doing some impact-based stuff, that's not a big deal. But for someone who hasn't been doing any activity, or someone who maybe they have been doing some activity, but they're carrying a lot of weight on their body, that impact can have a really big detriment on their body. especially when we start to go back and find out more via assessments about their hips, their knees, their ankles. And so just keeping in mind, it is more than just being out of shape. And there is this neurological learning process that comes along with getting people started and into an exercise routine. So as we continue to move forward in the next couple of chapters, this is the area where we'll really try to hone in on how you can help people beyond just expending calories when they're in the gym, because that's one part of the equation, but we need them to be injury-free long enough to do it month after month after month so they can see the changes that they came to you for. Now, no doubt, as we get into talking about our scope of practice at personal trainers, I'll be the first one to say we are not physical therapists. We are not here to diagnose. We're not here to treat people, but we are here to help people move better and be in less pain when it comes to the gym and exercise. And for a lot of individuals, this gets down to understanding their previous injury history and also how their body moves. And you can kind of see the two images that are here on the screen looking at what we might call optimal alignment of the body and maybe a more common alignment of the body based upon life. Think about this for a second. Think about those who work in a manual labor job. Maybe they're on a factory line, they're moving things on and off a belt, and they're doing the constant same motions from one side to the other. Or maybe think about a new mom who maybe not only for months and months was starting to carry weight in a different position for her body, which changes how we sit and how we move, but then now that she has her kid is carrying on a single side, all the things that we do in life, they have an impact. All right, think about this. Our body loves what we call homeostasis, which is this state of being, but it's adaptable. So if we do something long enough, our body is going to try to adapt to make it as easy as possible. All right, our body doesn't really care about how you feel. It cares about survival. And if we do something enough, it's going to adapt in that way. If we walk on our toes long enough, our body's going to adapt, and maybe we get shortened calves and we have issues there. So everybody's got their own thing, and for us as coaches and trainers, just knowing that when people come in, our goal is not to micro manipulate and break everyone down and find all their problems, but we do want to know that they may be coming in with some pre-existing issues, even as we look at orthopedic injuries, impact and non-impact related. You may have individuals who were athletes at a younger age, and maybe those issues and injuries never manifested themselves until 10, 15, 20 years later, because that does happen. Or we just have individuals who work at a desk, and over time, their shoulders, their thoracic spine, this posture starts to take a role on other things up or down this kinetic chain. So we'll continue to come back to these ideas and concepts, but this just goes along and in line with the idea that it's more than just being out of shape. It's about spending time setting the basis of movement, getting people moving and feeling better while we're still trying to address maybe the physiological, the physical changes that they aspire to have from working with you as a trainer. And so this slide just gives you some examples of some of the different types of, let's call it, dysfunctions. You can probably think, and feel free to raise your hand right now, although there's no one else in the room but you, but hey, who in here has been injured? All right, and what injuries? And oftentimes, even when we do this inside of our in-person course, everything from ankle sprains to ACL injuries to issues and pains inside of the low back, hip issues, shoulder pain, shoulder issues. And for a lot of people, some of these are, again, maybe they're contact and sport related. And for many people, they're just lifestyle related. You do something enough times and the body is very resilient, but without the right care and the right training, it does break down, all right? For as many things as our beautiful, amazing human body can do, we all end up with issues and strains and breaks and tears and all these things along the way. And so this just kind of gives you a visualization of some of these issues that clients might be coming in dealing with. Now, to go back again to where should I be in the scope of being an expert in these things and being aware of these things, some of it's an overall awareness. The nice thing about training is oftentimes you don't always have to have all the answers right there. Again, and we're also not trying to fix people. So if you're doing well to work with other health practitioners, which we'll talk about more down the road, and you're just doing your best to make sure that, all right, in an understanding of their body, their previous injuries, their issues, how they move, how can I design a program that's going to safely and effectively get them to their goals? And of course, if we can make them feel a little bit better in the process, no one's going to be upset about that. So this slide and the slides to come are really important, and I want you to pay attention. So actually, inside of your textbook materials, NASM doesn't introduce you to the OPT model quite yet, but I find it really important because this is going to be the foundation for a lot of the things that we'll build onto. And I think in relevance to some of the stuff that we've been talking about the disease states, the conditions, issues with orthopedic injuries, so many people dealing with these problems. And so I want to make sure that we start to talk about a potential solution, an answer, a direction for people, because there's so much possibility for people when it gets to working with you as a coach and trainer. And the OPT model is going to be a really, really great way to start to understand, how do I work with literally any client, any goal set, any injury, and know that I have a tried and true proven model to start to take them through. All right, so we'll spend time going through and breaking down each of these phases of the OPT model, which stands for the Optimum Performance Training Model. And this is a model that theoretically someone could continue to cycle back through for a lifetime, whether they're an athlete, whether they're just trying to feel better. Maybe not everyone will go through every single phase based upon their experience, based upon their goals, but this is going to be the framework for us talking about programming and talking about training moving forward in the course.